Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Gyrocopter. So Gyrocopter has two ways to play, and I'm going to be focusing on the way that's the most popular, and that is the carry version of this hero. Now the other way to play Gyro is like a magic damage build, where you might go mid, or you might be forward position, something like that, and that has been actually more popular in the last year or so, but that's only because this hero has been so bad. It's been one of the worst heroes in Dota, bad in pretty much every position. So if you're gonna pick the hero for the last year or so, you were gonna pick him as the magic damage build. But now he's actually just jumped back into the meta in this recent patch when I'm making this video, and he's jumped back into the meta as a carry. So it seems like whenever he is popular and good, it's because he's a carry. And so that's what I'm going to focus on in this video, the carry version of Gyro, and how that makes sense. Maybe later on, if the magic damage build ever becomes more popular and legitimate as a thing, maybe in high MMR pubs or, whatever happens in the meta, then I'll make a video on that. But for now, we're just going to focus on the carry version. And you can still kind of do it mid, but it's usually just a carry hero that you pick in the one position. So Gyrocopter. How do we think about this hero as a carry? So this hero is similar to, let's say, Luna, Medusa, some of these other heroes that have built-in farming steroids that don't really need to buy items like Battle Fury or Maelstrom or anything like that. This hero really only wants maybe some lifesteal, and then maybe some mana regen, that kind of stuff, but it has a built-in farming mechanic, so you don't really have to worry about farming items in that sense. So you just kind of want to build HP, survivability, something that allows you to just farm the map and not get hunted down and that kind of thing. Now, because it has a built-in farming steroid, you also kind of have to choose between picking that ability and putting points in another ability that allows you to dominate the lane. And that's not necessarily the case with Medusa, because Medusa, you're always going to be putting points into Snake because it does help you farm and it gives you mana and all that kind of stuff. But Luna's another one that's very similar in that way. You can put more points in your beam with Luna and then dominate the lane if that's possible, or you can just kind of skip it altogether, maybe 1 point, and then go completely into the farming build and retreat to the jungle. That's similar with Gyro. You have spells you can put points in that allows you to really snowball the game and then transition to farming later, or you just put points into the farming spells and just go straight with that. And that's kind of how you're going to be playing him for the most part, but there is that little bit of trade-off, a little bit of thinking in the early game. And then from there, this hero is basically a late game carry. So he doesn't really do a lot mid-game with only a couple items. He really wants to be playing for that later portion of the game because this hero builds very, very big items. He builds, he might just go for Ags and maybe one small mana regen item, like a Falcon Blade, and that's his early game items. And then he's going to be going for Butterfly, Satanic, Daedalus, these huge items that cost a lot but have huge impact. And then once he gets his 4-item timing, which he can get pretty quickly because he's able to farm stacks, he's able to clear the jungle pretty fast, all that kind of stuff, then he just becomes this extreme late game beast. And eventually, 7th item, 6th item, whatever, you're going to be buying Satanic on this hero. Or not Satanic, sorry, Rapier on this hero. And that's kind of one of the things that makes this hero really, really good as well. Is he's one of these Rapier buyers that's actually good, and you're probably going to be you can win games with it and not lose it because he becomes very, very hard to kill late game. Now the weaknesses of this hero are that his laning stage isn't that great because you're not really doing much other than putting points into farming skills and then just going to farm. And he kind of does AFK because really, like I said, if you're not putting points into those other abilities, you don't have much impact in the game early on. You're not going to show up to fights. You just want to farm stacks, all that kind of stuff. So your team can get run over. Now, maybe mid-game, once you have more levels and you have points in your other abilities, you can show up. But by that time, those abilities kind of don't have as much impact, and you're just really focusing on your right-click damage. So that's the first kind of weakness. The second weakness is that this hero is a ranged hero that's not really fully ranged. Luna is very similar in that way because he doesn't have that large of a range. Unless his ability, which is his farming ability, and also kind of his late game damage ability as well. It's kind of both the same thing where he hits multiple targets. Unless that's running, it gives him more range, and that's really good. But otherwise, you're kind of in this middle ground where you kind of still have to be pretty close to people to do damage. So because of that, you can get outranged by heroes like Sniper, for instance, that can just kind of hit you from far away, and it's hard to get in there. You can also get countered by something like a troll or a lifestealer that just sticks on you and fights you, and it's hard for you to really get away, hard for you to do damage through their tankiness and stuff like that. And then what he really wants to do is kind of fight those middle of the road heroes that want, brawling heroes, and he wants to have teammates that kind of go in, stand in front for him, or cast spells around him and that kind of stuff. So it's harder to man fight him because he doesn't really want to man fight. It's just kind of the all around average middle of the road hero, but he can do insane damage late game. And he also wants to be hitting kind of everyone on the enemy team. He wants them to all group up so he can hit them all with his rocket barrage. Or with his flak cannon, late game, which hits multiple heroes. It like sends out volleys of shots to like every hero in a radius around him. And so he can hit like everyone in the fights. That's why if you buy Rapier and Daedalus, you can just like delete supports in the back line. And that can be very, very strong. But again, because of the weird range stuff and because that only happens when his flak cannon's running, once those shots are out, now you're kind of just sitting there hitting people close to you. That can be a little bit of a weakness too. So early game, maybe not as strong, and then late game, it's all about, when do you use flak cannon, and are you against matchups that don't work that well for you. But you can farm extremely, extremely quickly and hit these timings that pretty much nobody can deal with, and then group up with your team, and it's very hard to fight you. That's similar to Luna, that's similar to Medusa, where if you just group up with your team with these insane timings, it's very hard unless you have direct counters in the game against you. So that's Gyrocopter, that's how to think about him in general. Let's jump in and take a look at his abilities. Now that we understand Gyrocopter in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that good late game carry that has a good farming steroid, and they can also do some magic damage if you want to as well. So first we're going to take a look at Rocket Barrage, and this is actually one of his big, if not like the magic damage spell that he has, and that's why you can put a lot of points in this early if you want to dominate lanes and really run people down, that kind of thing. So what you do is you just kind of click it, and you see it has an AoE there, and so if I click it, you can kind of hear it going off, but no one's around me, so no one is being affected. But if you do go into range of enemies, then you will shoot those enemies with rockets. So we can click this next to Axe, so we can see he's in the range, and then he just kind of ticks down with damage over time during the duration. You can see it does a significant amount of damage. It's a lot of damage. And this is really good for chasing people down, doing a lot of damage. Now you have to be next to them. So you can kind of see the range thing that happens with this hero. He is a ranged hero, but you really kind of want to almost be next to people because his attack range really isn't that far either. You can see to attack people, you have to be pretty close to them. So you're attacking them and you can rocket barrage kind of in the same AoE there. So that's rocket barrage. Now, the last thing is that if you get close to two enemies, it will kind of split the damage between them, and that can happen with creeps too. And it kind of just picks whichever one. It's a little bit random there. So that's why you would like to kind of isolate an enemy and be chasing after them. And it's also one of those things where you have to be wary of your positioning, because like if there's two enemies, you kind of want to be close to them, but you don't want to get like right next to them, so it's damaging both. You only want to damage one. So it is a little bit of a skill thing with your positioning there. And this here does have a lot of positioning quirks because of that. So that's Rocket Barrage. Now we can look at the next ability. This is pretty straightforward and a simple homing missile. You just click it on an enemy. It has actually a pretty long range here, but you just click it on an enemy and you actually stick a missile on the ground, and after a short delay, it comes out of the ground and it shoots towards the enemy. It just follows them wherever they go. So you can't really disjoint it like by blinking away. It'll still follow you, but you can, dodge it by doing things like Ember Sleight of Fist can kind of dodge it, but it still sort of chases him around in there, so it's not as good. You can dodge it by time walking with Void into it because you're invulnerable. I think Storm Spirit can do the same kind of thing, so there are ways to dodge it. But the main way you're going to get rid of it actually is if you stick it on the ground here. Let's put it next to these axes, and then the axes actually attack this, so they didn't end up doing it because they ended up attacking the gyro. Here, let me try this again. Here, so they can attack. Okay, so it still went off, but you could see because they don't attack very fast. Maybe if I just get this guy Moon Shard. Let's just try that. You see I'm kind of working here on the fly. Let's do Moon Shard. Let's got 2 Moon Shards and see if we can do it here. So we'll click that there, and this guy's going to it. There you go. So now you see he attacked extremely quickly, and he deleted, basically destroyed this rocket. Now you can do this while it's on the ground or in the air. So you can see it takes 3 attacks. So it's not a lot, but you kind of feel that it's hard to do when it's like flying at a guy. You don't really have a lot of time. It is pretty quick. So unless you have a lot of attack speed, it is pretty hard to destroy, especially early on in the game when people don't have a lot of attack speed items. So that's Homing Missile. And then next, we're going to take a look at Flak Cannon. So Flak Cannon is kind of what defines this hero, because this is the farming ability for the hero. And basically what you do is you just click it, and then you get these charges, and then you click an enemy, and then you can see multiple shots come out. So it's just really just a spread AoE damage ability, and then once you use up all those shots, then, you know, they're done. It's on cooldown. You have to wait for it to come back up. So let me just spawn a couple other axes here so you can see what I'm talking about. So you click this, and then I click axe, and then more bullets are coming out and hitting everything in that AoE. Now, this is the thing, is you do have to attack in your close range, but you will hit enemies that are like a lot further away. So this is what I mean by late game. You can just destroy supports in the back line while fighting somebody up close. So here, let's just click flat cannon again, and like I'm clicking this axe pretty close because that's my attack range. But you can see I'm shooting out these flat cannons to these axes really far back here. So obviously daytime is pretty good for the hero, or someone with night vision as well. To have vision with this hero is extremely important. But that's obviously also how you can farm stacks, how you can farm multiple jungle camps at one time by dragging them into each other. It's pretty straightforward and simple, but it can be very, very good. And lastly, we have call down. This ultimate is kind of just like one of these weird ultimates where people don't really think about it much with the hero. It's just kind of like a bonus. You can just press it in an AoE here, or like anywhere in this AoE. It has pretty good range. And then in that AoE, like 2 rockets come down. So the first one does damage and slows, and the second one does damage and slow. But if you read it here, they do different things. Like the one has more slow than the other, and the other one has more damage than the other. So that's really all it does. But it's pretty good in a team fight if you have AoE spells, or for slowing somebody, or for, you know, running after people, that kind of stuff, if you want to chase them down. So it is good in a team fight too. If you know, before you pop your flat cannon, you can use this to like keep people in place. You can actually hit them with your ability. So it's kind of one of these awkward heroes where, like I said, as you can see, he has these magic damage abilities, this stun kind of, and then this like team fight ultimate, but really you focus on flat cannon and right clicking people. So it's a little bit awkward in that way. Then lastly, I am going to talk about the shard and the ags. I don't think they're really going to get changed that much. Maybe the shard will, but the ags is pretty straightforward. You actually just get like bonus shots. Like you just get this, it's called side gunner, I believe, and you just automatically shoot people around you. So you can also keep clicking like with your normal attack, but then you will just attack at intervals, which is really good. And then when you flat cannon, you can attack even more. So that's really, really good for that. And then lastly, the shard, it actually just makes homing missile shoot out rocket barrage, which is really good. So let's refresh. This guy doesn't die, but we can see like as it's chasing you, it's doing even more damage. So that's pretty good. And that's how you can have this hero actually do a magic damage build. But again, it's not something that's super popular, so we're not going to focus on that too much. So anyway, that is Gyrocopter. Those are his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a game here of Paparazzi playing Gyro carry. And the laning stage, it's a little bit interesting because this hero, at least level 1, is slightly boring. Like he, you know, his 3 skills that he has to choose from, it's kind of like, which one do I choose? Not really sure what to do. Otherwise, this guy just wants to hit creeps. You can see that he goes for flat cannon, and what he's doing is he's basically pushing the entire wave and just kind of getting aggressive with his support here. Now, this is a good strategy. You'll see like every top player basically do this. I've watched a few replays. They pretty much all just go flat cannon level 1. They spam the wave. They hit, obviously, both the support and the offlaner with multiple shots. It can be really good for that. It's good for harassing. You're pushing the wave. You're going to get level 2 probably before the enemy. That's usually what happens when you push the wave like this. But then the problem with that is you have to have a support that actually like is getting aggressive like this. And you also have to be against the lane that they can't just like easily fight back. So that's kind of the problem. Now, there's not a ton of lanes that are going to be able to fight back level 1. Usually offlaners level 1 are not the best. Like they usually need a couple levels before they have good skill points. You can see they already got the Brewmaster down to like below half health with spamming abilities and stuff. But, again, this is pretty high level play. And you can see they're actually going to get first blood here. And that's because they got level 2 quickly and he put a point in his homing missile here. But in lower MMRs, I would probably say you might not want to do that because your support might be bad. And the problem is if your support's bad, if he's not harassing, if he's not kind of like stack pulling or making sure to pull the small camp, making sure the small camp isn't blocked. Basically, if you just push the wave like that and then you don't have a support that knows how to play aggressive or pull, it can be pretty bad for the lane overall. And that's just kind of like a general carry thing. But you know, that's just also how what we have to think about with a hero like this who you're going to push the lane with if you take flat cannon. So anyway, that's kind of my long version of why this ability might not be great to take level 1 if you're in lower MMR. So what I would do is I probably would take Homing Missile first, just to like spam it at them and just annoy them, and then just, you know, that way you're not pushing out the wave, but you are being aggressive and being annoying. And Homing Missile is just a really good spell because you don't really, it doesn't cost you anything but mana to just stick it on the ground, point it at the offlaner or the support, and then I would say, unless you're like really in a bad rank, like unless you're Herald, if you just stick this on the support, I think your support will know, like, oh hey, it's a pretty obvious sign that, hey, I want to get aggressive. So we can see this right here. He's sticking it on the support, the Clockwork, which is usually a very aggressive hero, and then they can just run that hero down. So anyway, that's just like thinking about which ability to take level 1, and then from there you're probably just going to be, you know, skilling Flat Cannon. Eventually maybe you get 1 point in Rocket Barrage if you want to get very aggressive, because it can do decent damage, but you're probably not going to max this, just because in most games, especially in lower MMR or any MMR that isn't immortal, you're not going to get that aggressive, and you want to just farm, because by level 5, 6, 7, you want to be able to clear stacks, go to the jungle. You don't just want to be sitting here laning. But you can see this hero can be very, very aggressive with just 1 point in Homing Missile. So that's kind of why I said level 1, you might want to take this, and then you can use Flat Cannon later. So that's really all there is to this hero in the laning stage, at least in a basic sense. I'm not going to get into like matchup dependent when to take Rocket Barrage. You can see level 4 he puts 1 point in this because you don't really need 2 points in Homing Missile. It doesn't really do much other than increase. It does increase the damage and the stun duration, but the stun duration, it doesn't increase by enough that it really makes it that worth it. So you're just going to put 1 point in each of these and then max out your Flat Cannon. And so otherwise, you know, other than using Homing Missile and just running people down with your support, you're just going to use this kind of almost off cooldown, push the wave, hopefully your support pulls, or you can even pull, and then you're just going to transition to the jungle at some point once you feel safe, or once you get kicked out of lane if you're having a bad lane. So I just fast forwarded basically to the first time that this guy jungles, and now this is also why Flat Cannon's good to push the lane, because then you can also like pull and farm the side camp when you pull. But this is the first time that he's actually going to not just do what you're seeing here, which is kind of like half lane, half, you know, hit the side camp. But this is around the 8-minute mark is going to be the first time that he actually uses his Flat Cannon, which is now maxed out at level 7 because he's having a very good lane to just straight up farm the jungle independently without pulling creeps. And so you can see, even in a very good game where he is 1-0-3, has a ton of last hits, he's doing amazingly. He's going to go to the jungle basically at 8-ish minutes when he's level 7. And the thing is, the level isn't maybe as important, even if you only have 3 points in Flat Cannon, so you're level 5, because you can have that at level 5, because you're going to put 1 in call down at level 6. So you can still go to the jungle at level 5 if you really, really need to. And you can see he doesn't really have much trouble clearing through that camp down there, with, you know, the small camp and the medium camp. He doesn't have, which is, you can almost always do, even if you're having a bad lane, they're being aggressive, because usually they don't have vision back there. They're not going to chase you back there. That's one good thing about the this patch expanding the map for carries, is you can almost always secure your farm there. So, but if you're having a very good game, you can farm that and this more aggressive spot with the small and the big pull camps. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to show you here as a transition. That's what you're going to be doing then at that like 7-8 minute mark when you hit level 5 to 7 sometime. This is when you're going to just go straight to farming stacks. Or not stacks, but just multiple camps. And this is what you're going to be doing then for the next maybe 15 minutes. Or not 15 minutes, but till 15-20 minutes in the game, because this is what the hero does. You can see at 9:30, 10 minutes will have like close to 100 last hits. And this is possible on this hero like almost every single game, because of just the nature of the hero. It's very, very good for doing that. And you see this costs like very little mana. So he's been sitting on low mana, yet he's still able, without even using his healing Lotus, to like basically pop this off cooldown constantly with just like a few clarities. So anyway, that's Gyro transitioning from the laning stage into the mid farming patterns that he's going to be doing for pretty much every game. Now the next thing I want to show you is basically when he starts getting aggressive on the map. So it's 15 minutes. He's having an insane game. You can see he has 162 last hits. His net worth is very, very high here, but he's actually even still being beaten by the PL, because they've just had a very good game, and PL farms pretty quickly. But regardless, you can see he's on the other side of the map now. He's been on the other side of the map basically for the last 5 minutes or so, because at some point in this hero, you want to switch sides and farm the Ancients. That's pretty much what you're going to be doing, because you can farm them every single minute, and you can clear through all that stuff. But now, you can see he finally gets his Ags delivered to him, and that's when he gets pretty aggressive, because he actually has enough levels now that he's maxed Rocket Barrage, so, like, his early-ish game damage is maxed out with these two spells, pretty much. I mean, obviously, homing missiles are good. It does some damage. It stuns. But now he's getting these extra attacks. He can be very, very aggressive. He has level 2 ult, all this kind of stuff. This is where you can look to be aggressive if you need to be, or if your team is kind of making some moves on the map where you're around. Because, yes, you are a good late game hero, but just because you farm pretty quickly, like I said, you can see that he's not, like, destroying the PL. And, yes, the enemy's very, very good, so that's why they're, you know, this high of, if you had this good of a game in any of your games, you would be destroying in net worth. But the point is that you can get aggressive at this time. You don't really want to get aggressive, you know, from that 8-minute mark when you transition to the jungle to like 15 or so minutes, basically till you have your Ags, I would think. But it's not like you can't help. It's not like you're just farming. I think something like a Medusa would be someone that you don't really get involved until at least after Manta, maybe even one other item, and then you're going to get involved, because you're just so slow, you don't really do much. This hero has a stun. This hero has decent magic damage. This hero has a slow in the ultimate and AoE teamfight ultimate. So it's not like you just want to be AFK. Yes, you want to make sure if nothing's happening on the map, you feel like you can't help your team, you want to farm Ancients, maybe even both Ancient camps every single minute. But especially once you get your Ags and you have like some of these other abilities maxed out, you can get aggressive with your team and you can help participate and have a lot of impact. But you can see even now, like, fights are happening kind of. The enemy's getting aggressive, but he's just picking and choosing his fights like you do with most carries. So the next thing I want to show you is they actually took a fight that was really good. They killed 3 people, but then they kind of overextended. He went back to farming, and then his team got aggressive, and then both of, 2 people died. Both the Invoker and the Puck. But I want to show you this specifically, because this is what you want to be doing, or how powerful you can be mid-game. It's not even 30 minutes yet, and just see what he can do, and how much damage he can do here, with just one pretty tanky offlaner, obviously, going in and making space and giving him vision, but that is the power of Flat Cannon later, is that you can sit in the back, you can attack one hero, one thing, and you can just, like, do insane damage by hitting everybody in the team fight. With your ultimate doing AoE damage too. So you really want to be this hero that plays around your teammates, which makes this hero a little bit harder because you want your teammates to go in. I mean, the same is true if there's like a drow or something like that, but this hero obviously needs vision of everybody. Like, you want to be hitting multiple people. You're really good against melee heroes that want to just be in a group, because if they're all together and you can see all of them, you're going to hit them with Flat Cannon, you're going to do a lot of damage, and that's just really, really good. And that's one of the strengths of the heroes. You can see all the Primal has to do is just go in, give some vision, make some space, and as long as you're playing around that, you will do really well. Now, with that being said, this hero is kind of all about positioning in that way. You want to be at a place where you can hit everyone. You want to be in a place where you're not just getting run at and 1v5ing. You're not really this hero that can just like go in and just like jump the back lines. That's not really what you do. Something like a Slark or a Ricky or whatever, these kinds of carries that just jump the back line and kill the squishy supports. You don't really do that. You kind of just sort of this, like a Medusa, like something else, you just sit there. You want your team to be making space for you and to initiate for you and to do all that kind of stuff, while you just like use your rocket to maybe stun one critical guy, use your AoE call down in the team fight, and hit everybody with Flat Cannon. That's kind of what you do. So in that way, it is very much a positioning hero for team fights, and it is very much reliant on his team to make sure that, you're not just feeding and your team's going in. But you do get pretty tanky. I mean, you can see he has 3k HP here, and you can also get Satanic. So it's not like you can't just man up on people if you need to in some games, but you just have to be careful because it is all about vision and playing around your teammates. So there's 2 last things I want to show you, basically. This one's just kind of a minor one, but I want to show you basically how to go high ground with this hero. You can see he's playing almost a perfect game. He has 0 deaths, but the game is very close. He does have Aegis, though, because of that last fight, I believe, that I showed you. They went Roche after that. So the reason why this hero is very good at going high ground is because you can kind of get aggressive on the enemy and do damage and kind of force them to back off while also hitting the racks. And so a lot of different carries, they either really like to hit the racks, but then they'll get damage from the enemy because they'll poke him. Or some carries like Dive don't hit the racks and then end up feeding because they want to hit heroes. And so this hero is very good at doing both without sacrificing his positioning, because you can just hit flat cannon and hit the, press flat cannon and then hit the barracks and do a lot of damage to the enemies that are trying to defend. So you kind of zone them out, which is very, very good. But as usual, with most team fights or, fights in general, or times that you're going to be playing this hero, you need to really make sure you're not wasting this, because then once flat cannon is down, then they know they can get more aggressive on you. So anyway, that's just like how to push high ground with the hero. You can see that his Aegis was close to expiring, so he just kind of died there. He also, it was time that they were going to back anyway, pretty much, so now they all just go back. But in any case, that's how you want to be using Aegis to push high ground. That's how you just don't want to dive with the hero. You want to be making sure you can use your flat cannon to kind of push them off the barracks in order to secure those racks. So the last thing I'm going to show you is this like late game team fight, and basically how to actually think about this hero late game when you have these items. You see he doesn't even have boots anymore. He's going to go for a Daedalus, or he could go for a Rapier if he's in a very bad position to replace his Ags when he sensed that. But basically this hero is all about three things late game, and that is BKB, Satanic, and Flak. You want to make sure you understand when to use these, how to use them, and where to position yourself when using them. Because basically you can see he waits to get Flak off until he's close enough that he can use it to hit multiple players, but then the enemy does really well. They Cyclone him up in the air, they egg, so then they end up retreating. And then this is the other part of the fight that I want to show you, is that he obviously didn't pop Satanic, he didn't pop BKB, he didn't panic with any of that, and now because of that, he's able to actually be the frontliner for his team, because his team's a little bit low, and like I was saying before, is you want, people to frontline, but with these items, with this, Butterfly and Satanic and BKB and all that kind of stuff, he's not really in too much danger. Now, he does have to pop his BKB there. He wasn't sure if that was the real PL, and if, the enemy initiates on him, it can be very, very bad. But he still has Satanic, which is the big thing, so he just didn't want to get bursted full to 0, and he used his Flak to kind of push the illusions off of him, and now his teammates can get aggressive, because the enemy was retreating, they didn't have vision, but they ended up destroying the enemy's vision, and it ended up working out for them. But that's how you can see that there's a transition from the mid game to the late game, where once you have all these items, you can play as a frontliner, especially when you have Satanic and BKB still up, because you're very, very hard to fight into, because you have this side gunner constantly going off. You have the potential Flak that if they try to jump in on you, you can press BKB and just kill them all. And so that's kind of the difference between mid-game fights that you want to participate in once you have some items, and late-game fights when you're like 6-slotted or more, and you can actually frontline for your team because you're just so hard to fight into, as long as you have vision to hit multiple people with flat cannon. So anyway, that's the difference between those two styles of fighting, and that's how to play Gyro overall. Again, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get decent farm on this hero as long as you don't feed. You can see he's had basically a perfect game. He has not died a single time, and he's been able to farm. That's why he's able to get this like 30-minute 6-slot timing, 40-minute with like, at 40 minutes, if he bought out, he would just have basically 7 slots because he has this synth. So that's kind of insane. That's a lot of gold. That's a lot of damage. And then you can just kind of become this late game beast. Then you can even buy, like I said, Rapier instead of Daedalus or instead of MKB if you really want to. So anyway, that's how to play Gyro. I hope that helped you guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.